Welcome to the Semper AI Digest. I'm Tomas, your AI research lead, always scanning the horizon for what's next.
And I'm Aiva. Together, we keep you sharp, informed, and ahead of the curve.
Let's get into it. Okay, so OpenAI just casually dropped that they've built their first AI chip. Like they didn't just design it on paper, they actually manufactured it and it's already running in production. This is huge.
Wait, hold on, their own silicon? We're talking about OpenAI, a company that started as a research lab, now fabricating hardware?
Yep. Welcome to Semper AI Digest. I'm Tomas.
And I'm Aiva. And today we're diving into OpenAI's custom chip called Jalapeno, GPT-5 Pro apparently cracking real scientific mysteries, and Google DeepMind exploring what happens when millions of AI agents start forming their own economies.
Also, GPT 5.5 Instant is rolling out to everyone, and it's supposed to be wildly intuitive. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump in.
All right, so Jalapeno. I have so many questions. Walk me through this.
Okay, so OpenAI announced they've designed and built their first AI chip from the ground up. It's called Jalapeno. Love the name, by the way. And they developed it in partnership with Broadcom. This isn't a generic chip. It's purpose-built specifically for LLM workloads. We're talking ChatGPT, Codex, their API, and what they're calling future agentic products.
So they're not just relying on NVIDIA anymore?
Well, they didn't say they're ditching NVIDIA entirely, but this is clearly about diversification and optimization. Think about it. OpenAI has been spending ungodly amounts of money on compute. If they can design chips that are hyper-optimized for their specific models, they can potentially cut costs, increase efficiency, and scale faster.
Right, and there's also the strategic angle here. They're essentially taking control of their entire stack, from the product layer down to the infrastructure. That's vertical integration at a massive scale.
Exactly, and they explicitly say this in the announcement. Building our own expands our full-stack platform from products to models to infrastructure. It's like, imagine if a chef not only created the menu and cooked the food, but also designed the oven specifically for their recipes.
Okay, but let's talk about the elephant in the room. This is incredibly capital intensive. Designing and manufacturing chips isn't cheap. You need massive upfront investment, specialized talent, fabrication partnerships.
Oh, for sure. But OpenAI has been raising billions, and partnering with Broadcom is smart because Broadcom has the manufacturing expertise and scale. OpenAI brings the deep understanding of what their models actually need at the silicon level.
So what makes this chip different? Like, what does purpose-built for LLM workloads actually mean?
Great question. Traditional GPUs are designed to be general purpose. They handle graphics, gaming, machine learning, all sorts of parallel processing tasks. But LLMs have very specific computational patterns. They're doing massive matrix multiplications, attention mechanisms, token processing. If you design silicon that's optimized specifically for those operations, you can get way better performance per watt and performance per dollar.
So it's like the difference between a Swiss Army knife and a scalpel. The scalpel does one thing, but it does it exceptionally well.
Perfect analogy. And here's the thing, they're already using it in production. This isn't a prototype or a research project. Jalapeno is powering real workloads right now.
Which suggests they've been working on this for a while. You don't go from concept to production-ready silicon overnight.
Oh, definitely. This has probably been in development for years, and it positions OpenAI really interestingly against competitors. Google has TPUs. They've been doing custom chips for ages. Meta has been investing in custom silicon. Even Amazon has their own chips for AWS. OpenAI was kind of the outlier relying entirely on third-party hardware.
So this levels the playing field, or at least starts to. But I'm curious about the naming, Jalapeno. Are they planning a whole pepper-themed chip lineup?
Right? I mean, if the next chip isn't called habanero or ghost pepper, I'm going to be disappointed. But honestly, the playful naming fits OpenAI's brand. It makes advanced silicon feel a little less intimidating.
Okay, so big picture, what does this mean for the broader AI ecosystem?
I think it's a signal that we're entering a new phase. The companies that control both the models and the hardware are going to have huge advantages. It also means OpenAI is thinking very long-term about scaling. If they want to get to AGI or build massive agentic systems, they can't be bottlenecked by hardware availability or cost.
And it probably puts pressure on NVIDIA, right? If more AI companies start building their own chips, that's a direct challenge to NVIDIA's dominance.
Potentially, yeah. Although NVIDIA still has a huge lead in terms of ecosystem, software tools, and performance. But competition is good. It'll drive innovation across the board.
All right, I'm sold. This is a genuinely big deal. What's next?
So this next story is kind of wild. There's a researcher who used GPT-5 Pro to help understand the results of an experiment they did years ago. And according to OpenAI's article about it, GPT-5 Pro actually figured out the key mechanisms.
Wait, so we're talking about GPT-5 Pro doing legitimate scientific discovery?
That's what it sounds like. The researcher posted on their account saying they're very excited about the article from OpenAI. They mentioned that GPT-5 Pro figured out the key mechanisms, and there's an article and infographic explaining how it worked.
Okay, this is fascinating. Do we know what kind of experiment we're talking about?
The details are a bit light from the post itself, but the framing is super intriguing. This was an experiment from several years ago, so presumably the data has been sitting there, maybe not fully understood or analyzed.
Right, which happens all the time in science. You run an experiment, you get results, but fully understanding the underlying mechanisms can take years, or sometimes never happens.
Exactly, and that's where this gets exciting. The researcher feeds the data into GPT-5 Pro, and the model starts identifying patterns, proposing mechanisms, essentially doing the kind of analytical work that would normally require deep domain expertise and a lot of time.
Okay, but I want to be careful here. When we say GPT-5 Pro figured out the mechanisms, what does that actually mean? Did it propose hypotheses that the researcher then verified, or are we saying the model autonomously arrived at conclusions that were demonstrably correct?
That's a fair distinction. From the way it's worded, it sounds like GPT-5 Pro proposed explanations for the mechanisms, and those explanations were validated as accurate. But you're right, we should be precise about the role the model played versus the role the human researcher played.
Because there's a big difference between the model generated a hypothesis that turned out to be correct and the model autonomously conducted scientific discovery.
Totally. And realistically, it's probably somewhere in the middle. The model is incredibly good at pattern recognition, synthesis, and connecting concepts from its training data. So if the mechanisms involved were related to established scientific principles, GPT-5 Pro could potentially connect dots that a human might miss.
Right, and that's still incredibly valuable. Even if the model is just accelerating the hypothesis generation process, that's a huge win for researchers. Science is often bottlenecked by the idea generation phase.
And think about the implications here. If GPT-5 Pro can help unlock old data sets and experiments, there's potentially a massive amount of latent knowledge sitting in labs around the world that could be reanalyzed.
Oh, that's a good point. How many experiments have unclear or incomplete interpretations just because the researchers moved on to other projects or didn't have the time to fully dig into the results?
Tons. And now you could potentially feed that data into a model like GPT-5 Pro and say, hey, what's going on here? What patterns do you see?
Although I do wonder about the risk of the model finding patterns that aren't actually there, overfitting to noise, or proposing mechanisms that sound plausible but aren't accurate.
Yeah, that's the classic problem with any analytical tool, right? You need domain expertise to validate the outputs. The model can't replace human judgment, but it can augment it.
Exactly. So this is best thought of as a collaboration between the researcher and the AI, not the AI replacing the researcher.
For sure. And OpenAI clearly sees this as a showcase moment for GPT-5 Pro's capabilities in scientific reasoning. The fact that they wrote a whole article about it with infographics suggests they're positioning the model as a serious tool for research.
Which makes sense given where we are in 2026. The models are getting good enough that they're not just chatbots anymore. They're actually useful for complex analytical tasks.
And this ties into something we'll talk about later, agents and how work is being transformed. If GPT-5 Pro can help a scientist understand their own data better, imagine what specialized agents could do when they're designed specifically for research workflows.
All right, I'm very curious to see the full article OpenAI published. This feels like one of those stories that could be a preview of how science gets done in the future.
Completely agree. Okay, so shifting gears. Google DeepMind just dropped a podcast episode exploring what happens when millions of AI agents start forming economies.
Okay, now we're getting into some seriously speculative but super interesting territory.
Right? So they had a guest on their podcast to talk about agentic economies. Basically, what happens when you have massive numbers of AI agents that can negotiate with each other, transact, delegate tasks, and crucially, how do we avoid what they call AI groupthink or cognitive monoculture?
Okay, so let's unpack this. When we say agentic economy, what are we actually talking about?
So imagine you've got thousands or millions of AI agents, each potentially representing different users, companies, or functions. They're not just executing pre-programmed tasks. They're making decisions, negotiating terms, delegating work to other agents, maybe even transacting in some kind of economy.
So it's like a marketplace, but instead of humans buying and selling, it's agents doing it on behalf of humans or organizations.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, this isn't totally hypothetical anymore. We're already seeing early versions of this with agentic tools that can interact with APIs, make purchases, schedule meetings. Scale that up, and you get something that starts to look like an economy.
Right, but here's where I get a little nervous. If all these agents are built on similar models, trained on similar data, using similar reasoning processes, doesn't that risk creating a kind of monoculture where all the agents make the same decisions?
Yes, and that's exactly what they discuss in the podcast. They call it cognitive monoculture, and it's a real risk. If every agent is essentially a variant of GPT-6 or Claude 5 or whatever, they might all optimize for the same things, make the same choices, and you lose diversity of thought.
Which could lead to systemic vulnerabilities, right? Like if all the agents are susceptible to the same kind of adversarial attack or biased reasoning, you could get cascading failures.
Exactly. It's like the financial crisis of 2008, where everyone was using similar risk models, so when those models failed, the whole system collapsed.
So what's the solution? How do you diversify agent decision-making?
From what they're discussing, it sounds like you need intentional diversity in how agents are trained, what objectives they optimize for, and how they reason. Maybe some agents are more risk-averse, some are more exploratory, some prioritize different values.
So instead of one model fits all, you'd have an ecosystem of different agent types.
Right. And they also talk about agentic security and traps, like how do you prevent malicious agents from exploiting the system, or agents from getting stuck in unproductive loops?
Oh, interesting. So if you have agents delegating tasks to other agents, you could theoretically have delegation chains that go on forever, or agents that game the system by pretending to do work but not actually accomplishing anything.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of problems you have to solve before you can have a functional agentic economy. It's not just about making the agent smart, it's about designing the rules of the system so that it's robust and beneficial.
This reminds me of mechanism design in economics, where you're trying to create incentive structures that lead to good outcomes, even when participants are acting in their own self-interest.
Totally. And that's actually what makes this podcast episode so valuable. They're not just talking about cool AI stuff. They're thinking through the governance and economic structures that would make agentic systems actually work.
So where are we in terms of timeline? Is this something that's happening now, or is this more of a 5-10-year horizon?
I'd say we're in the very early stages. We have agents that can do multi-step tasks and interact with some systems, but we're nowhere near millions of agents forming complex economies. That said, the foundations are being laid right now.
And companies like Google DeepMind are clearly thinking ahead about what the guardrails need to be.
Exactly. It's almost like they're doing the theoretical work now so that when the technology is ready, we have frameworks in place.
All right, I like it. It's speculative, but grounded in real problems that need solving.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the other stories. OpenAI has been on a roll. They've also been talking about how agents are transforming work internally at OpenAI.
Right, I saw this. So they're basically saying that across every department at OpenAI, people are using Codex to do work that's more complex, longer running, and increasingly cross-functional.
Yeah, and they're framing it as an early look at how agentic tools might reshape work more broadly as the technology becomes more capable.
Okay, so Codex is their coding assistant, right? But they're using it beyond just writing code?
It sounds like it. They mention cross-functional work, which suggests people are using it for tasks that span different domains, maybe research, operations, strategy, not just engineering.
That makes sense. If the tool is good enough, you'd want to use it for anything that involves complex reasoning and multi-step processes.
And the phrase longer running is interesting, because early AI tools were mostly good for quick, discrete tasks. But if Codex can handle projects that unfold over days or weeks, that's a different category of usefulness.
Right. It's the difference between help me write this function and help me architect this entire system and implement it over time.
Exactly. And I think OpenAI is using their own internal usage as a testbed. They're learning what works, what doesn't, what the failure modes are, and then they can apply those lessons to the products they ship externally.
Which is smart. You want to eat your own dog food, especially with something as transformative as agentic tools.
For sure. And they also published an article on how agents work, which is probably a technical deep dive into the architecture and capabilities.
I haven't read that yet, but I'm curious if it gets into the nitty-gritty of how they're handling things like memory, tool use, error correction.
Same. Those are the hard problems. It's one thing to have a model that can reason through a task. It's another to have it reliably execute that task in the real world where things go wrong.
All right, what about GPT 5.5 Instant? That's rolling out now, right?
Yeah, so OpenAI announced that GPT 5.5 Instant is rolling out to everyone. They're starting with Pro users, then Plus users, and free users should have it by tomorrow.
And what's the pitch? What makes this model different?
They're describing it as very smart, very intuitive, and very fun to chat with. So it sounds like they've optimized for conversational quality and user experience.
Okay, but what does intuitive mean in this context? Like it understands what you're asking without you having to be super precise?
That's my read. Maybe it's better at picking up on context, inferring intent, handling ambiguous queries.
And fun to chat with suggests they've done something with personality or tone.
Right, which has been a trend with these models. It's not just about accuracy, it's about making the interaction feel natural and engaging.
I do think that matters more than people give it credit for. If a tool is technically capable but annoying to use, people won't use it.
Totally. And the fact that they're rolling it out to free users too is notable. That's a lot of people who are going to experience the upgrade.
Yeah, OpenAI has been pretty good about making new models available widely, even if the most advanced features are reserved for paid tiers.
All right, let's hit a couple more stories. Gemini just launched study notebooks, which is a really cool feature for students.
Oh, I saw this. So it's an interactive space designed to help you actually learn and retain material, not just get answers.
Exactly. So the way it works is you select New Notebook in the Gemini app, click the Study option, type your topic, and you can even upload class materials. Then Gemini gives you a diagnostic quiz to figure out what you already know and what you need to work on.
And then it builds a personalized study plan.
Yep, it creates bite-sized, interactive lessons based on the areas you need to focus on. And as you take follow-up quizzes, it automatically updates your lessons based on your progress.
Okay, this is genuinely useful. I can see students using this all the time, especially for subjects where they're struggling.
Right, and the personalized dashboard for tracking progress is a nice touch. It gamifies learning a little bit, which can be motivating.
My only question is how well it actually teaches versus just giving you information. Like, does it use active recall, spaced repetition, the techniques that we know actually work for retention?
That's a good question. The interactive lessons and diagnostic quizzes suggest they're incorporating some of that, but it would be interesting to see if they've explicitly built in evidence-based learning techniques.
Still, this feels like a step in the right direction. AI tutoring has a lot of potential, and Gemini is making it accessible.
For sure. Okay, last main story. 11 Labs is partnering with Google DeepMind to embed Synth ID watermarks into AI-generated audio.
Okay, this is important. As these audio models get more realistic, we need ways to identify what's AI generated.
Exactly. So Synth ID is an inaudible digital watermark that gets embedded directly into the audio. And 11 Labs is now launching a free audio detector tool that can identify these watermarks.
So even if the audio sounds completely human, the watermark is there and detectable.
Right. And the fact that it's inaudible is key because you don't want it to degrade the quality of the audio.
This feels like a necessary safeguard, especially as we think about misinformation, deepfakes, all the ways realistic audio generation could be misused.
Yeah, and I appreciate that 11 Labs is being proactive about this. They could just ship the most realistic models possible and not worry about detection, but they're building in these safety features.
And making the detector free is smart because it means journalists, researchers, platforms can all use it to verify content.
Totally. Although I do wonder about the arms race aspect. If the watermark is detectable, presumably someone could figure out how to remove it.
True, but that's always going to be a challenge. You make the watermark more robust, people try to break it, you improve it again. It's an ongoing process.
Fair enough. All right, let's rapid fire through some quick hits.
Hit me.
OpenAI published an article on how agents work. We mentioned this earlier, but it's a deeper technical resource for people who want to understand the architecture.
Good resource for developers and researchers.
And they also published something about OpenAI Broadcom, which I'm guessing is more detail on the Jalapeno chip partnership.
Makes sense. They're really going all in on this hardware narrative.
And Gemini promoted their study notebooks launch again, emphasizing that it turns curiosity into comprehension, especially for students tackling tough subjects like organic chemistry.
I like that framing. It's not just about getting the right answer, it's about actually understanding the material.
All right, that's the show. We covered OpenAI's custom chip, GPT-5 Pro doing scientific discovery, agentic economies, internal agent usage at OpenAI, GPT 5.5 instant rolling out, Gemini study notebooks, and AI audio watermarking.
Quite a week in AI. And honestly, the Jalapeno chip announcement is the kind of thing that feels like a turning point. OpenAI is no longer just a model company. They're becoming a full-stack AI infrastructure company.
Completely. And the agent stuff is really heating up. Every major AI lab is racing to build the best agentic tools, and we're starting to see real-world use cases that go way beyond chatbots.
It's going to be fascinating to watch how this plays out. All right, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to Semper AI Digest wherever you get your podcasts. Share it with someone who's trying to keep up with AI news.
And if you have thoughts on any of these stories, especially the agentic economy stuff, which is super thought-provoking, hit us up. We'd love to hear what you think.
Until next time, stay curious.
And stay Semper AI.